let me say something that will immediately make some people uncomfortable. Aquarius is not a good person. And before you close this, before you get offended, before you rush to argue in your head, stay with me for just a moment. Because if your first reaction is, "How dare you say that?" then you're exactly the person who needs to hear what comes next. Aquarius is not here to be good. They're here to be necessary. And those two things are not the same. Not even close. We live in a culture obsessed with goodness. Be kind. Be nice. Be supportive. Be agreeable. Be palatable. Be emotionally safe. We reward people who make us feel comfortable. We punish people who disrupt the emotional temperature of the room. And Aquarius does not regulate for comfort. They regulate for truth, for systems, for outcomes that most people don't even realize are at risk yet. That's why they get misunderstood. That's why they get labeled cold, detached, arrogant, difficult. That's why they're often disliked long before they're ever appreciated. Because Aquarius doesn't ask, "Does this feel good right now?" They ask, "Does this actually work?" And that single difference changes everything. Here's something most people never consciously think about. A good person is someone who maintains harmony in the moment. They smooth things over. They keep the peace. They avoid saying the thing that might hurt someone's feelings. They preserve relationships, norms, emotional stability. A good person is socially rewarded. They're easy to be around. They're praised for their empathy, their warmth, their kindness. But a necessary person often makes people deeply uncomfortable. Because necessary people don't protect feelings first. They protect systems. They protect the future. They protect the integrity of what's real. And Aquarius lives in that second category. Aquarius is the person who walks into a room where everyone is smiling, agreeing, nodding along, and feels, instantly, that something is wrong. Not emotionally wrong, structurally wrong. They sense the flaw in the foundation before the building collapses. They notice the contradiction everyone else has normalized. They see the rule that no longer makes sense, but is still being followed out of habit. And when they speak up, it doesn't sound kind. It sounds inconvenient. It sounds disruptive. It sounds like a threat. Because it is a threat to comfort, to tradition, to collective denial. Here's the part that really upsets people. Aquarius doesn't need to be liked to function. They don't need approval to move forward. They don't need emotional validation to believe they're right. They don't even need people to understand them in the moment. That scares people. Because most humans are wired to survive through belonging, through agreement, through emotional feedback. Aquarius is wired to survive through clarity. They would rather be alone and correct than surrounded and complicit. And that choice, whether conscious or not, puts them at odds with almost everyone. Think about it. How many times in history were the people who challenged the system liked when they did it? Almost never. They were mocked, ignored, exiled, silenced, sometimes destroyed. Only later did people say, "Oh, they were right." Aquarius energy lives in that gap between "you're wrong" and "you were right all along." But most people only respect Aquarius in hindsight. In real time, they're a problem. They ask the wrong questions. They refuse to accept because that's how it's always been. They don't play emotional politics well. They don't soften truths to make them easier to swallow. And no, this doesn't make them morally superior. It makes them functionally dangerous to outdated systems. That's why people try to shame Aquarius into being nicer. Why can't you say it more gently? Why do you have to be so blunt? Why can't you just let people believe what they want? Because Aquarius understands something most people avoid. Comfort delays collapse. Truth accelerates change. And sometimes, collapse is worse than discomfort. Aquarius is willing to be the villain today if it prevents disaster tomorrow. That's not goodness. That's necessity. Here's a hard truth. The world doesn't break because there aren't enough kind people. It breaks because there aren't enough people willing to interrupt lies early. And Aquarius interrupts lies. Even when it costs them socially. Even when it isolates them. Even when they lose relationships, opportunities, reputations. They're not chasing moral purity. They're chasing functional reality. And that's why they often feel out of sync with everyone else. While others are asking, how do we keep everyone happy? Aquarius is asking, how do we stop this from rotting under the surface? Those questions don't coexist peacefully. There's another reason this message makes people uncomfortable. Most people want to believe that being good is enough. That if you mean well, if your intentions are pure, if your heart is in the right place, then the outcome will take care of itself. Aquarius doesn't buy that. They look at outcomes. They look at consequences. They look at patterns repeating across time. They know that good intentions don't fix broken systems. They know that empathy without structure often enables harm. They know that silence in the name of peace is still silence. And when they point that out, people feel exposed. Because it forces a question no one likes to answer. Am I actually helping, or am I just being comfortable? That's why Aquarius gets pushback. Not because they're wrong, but because they disrupt moral self-images. They make people confront the possibility that kindness without courage is not enough. Let's talk about something even more uncomfortable. Aquarius doesn't prioritize individual emotions the way most people expect. That doesn't mean they don't care. It means they zoom out. They think in terms of systems, long-term consequences, collective impact. And when you think like that, you sometimes have to let people be upset. You sometimes have to let relationships strain. You sometimes have to say things that will not land softly. Aquarius understands that saving everyone's feelings today can cost everyone's stability tomorrow. So they choose the unpopular path. Over and over again. This is why they're often excluded, sidelined, or quietly pushed out. Groups don't expel Aquarius because they're cruel. They expel Aquarius because Aquarius threatens the illusion that everything is fine. And humans protect illusions fiercely. Here's the irony. When things truly fall apart, when systems fail, when old rules collapse, when the familiar no longer works, that's when people suddenly look for Aquarius. That's when they ask, what do we do now? How did you know? Why didn't we listen? But by then, Aquarius is already 10 steps ahead, or already gone, because they don't stay where reality is being denied. They move on, and that can feel like abandonment to others. But from Aquarius's perspective, staying would mean lying to themselves. They are not loyal to people at the expense of truth. They are loyal to truth, even when it costs them people. Again, not goodness, necessity. And here's where the biggest misunderstanding happens. People assume Aquarius chooses to be this way because they don't care. In reality, many Aquarius feel deeply alone because of this role. It's not easy to be the one who sees the flaw no one wants to fix. It's not comfortable to be the one who speaks up and gets labeled difficult. It's not fun to be right and rejected at the same time. But they accept that loneliness as part of the function. Someone has to say the thing that doesn't fit. Someone has to challenge the story everyone else is invested in. Someone has to step outside emotional consensus and ask if it makes sense. Aquarius fills that role whether they're thanked for it or not. So when you hear, Aquarius is not a good person, what's really being said is this. Aquarius is not optimized for emotional comfort. They're optimized for correction. They don't exist to soothe. They exist to recalibrate. And recalibration always feels violent to a system that's grown used to being wrong. That's why people argue about Aquarius so fiercely. Some defend them passionately. Some reject them completely. Because they force a split. Either you value comfort over change, or change over comfort. There is no neutral position with Aquarius. And that's exactly why this message spreads. Because somewhere deep down, people recognize the truth in it. They may not like it. They may fight it. They may comment angrily, but they feel it. They've all experienced a moment where someone told them a truth that hurt, but saved them later. That person was rarely the nicest one in the room. They were the necessary one. So if you're an Aquarius listening to this and feeling seen, understand this. You were never meant to be universally liked. You were meant to be structurally useful. And if you're not an Aquarius and this made you uncomfortable, ask yourself why. Is it because it sounds wrong? Or because it challenges the idea that being good is enough? The world doesn't move forward because everyone agrees. It moves forward because someone disrupts the agreement at the right moment. That someone is often Aquarius. So the next time you feel irritated by one, or tempted to dismiss them as cold, heartless, or arrogant, consider this. They may not be protecting your feelings, but they might be protecting your future. And if this perspective made you pause, if it made you rethink someone you misunderstood, or recognize yourself in a way you hadn't before, go ahead and let the algorithm know. Like it. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe if you want more truths that feel uncomfortable at first, but make sense later. Because not everything that challenges you is wrong. Sometimes, it's just necessary.